Hello everyone, Jules here. Today I'd like to talk about a book that is about Tarot and Kabbalah that is not very well known. That is Tarot and Kabbalah by Samael Aun Weor. So I wanted to talk about this book today because it's a book that is quite unique and very interesting. It's for people who may have already quite a few books about Tarot and Kabbalah, and people who also want to learn a bit more about a different system other than the Golden Dawn system. This book is based more on European esotericism or the French esoteric system. So I just wanted to say that just to start with, but for people who are interested in looking at something a bit different in regard to Tarot and Kabbalah, this is quite an interesting book. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the author to start with, and then I'm going to talk about what's in the book. So the author, Samael Aun Weor, that was actually his esoteric practitioner name. He was actually born Victor Rodriguez in South America, and he later moved to Mexico later on in his life. He was originally taught by a German Rosicrucian. So this book has definitely got quite a Rosicrucian basis as well. And when he was first learning these teachings, he was also quite influenced by Eliphas Levi, and he does mention some of the ideas of Eliphas Levi in the book as well. He was also influenced by Theosophy, which is the teachings of Blavatsky. But he was also influenced by Tantra. And for people who are not all that aware of Tantra, or some people who are aware of Tantra will only know the most common idea of Tantra, which is more of the physical practice of Tantra. But Samael Aun Weor actually practiced what he called a white form of Tantra. And in the book, he actually talks about 3 different types of Tantra practice. So that's one thing about this book that I like as well. The author does define everything. He explains what he means with most of what he's saying. There's even a very good glossary in the book as well, at the back of the book, as well as an index. But the glossary, I think, is really helpful, especially what he means by these terms. He has his own, some of them are his own definitions, other definitions are generally known, but some of these are his own interpretations. So what happened with his learnings as he went along? You've got the German Rosicrucian foundation, then you add the French esoteric ideas of Eliphas Levi, some Theosophy, and then the White Tantra. with this combination of ideas, he formulated his own theory of what he called universal gnosis. And by that, he really meant self-realization. So I think for a lot of people, they hear the word gnosis and they think of the usual form of Gnosticism that is quite well known. But Samael Aun Weor really meant personal gnosis, which is different to the generally known idea of Gnosticism. And one thing I should mention about Gnosticism as well, there were many different types of Gnosticism. There wasn't just the one type of Gnosticism. I've talked about Gnosticism before in other videos for people who want to have a look at other Gnostic and Gnosticism videos on my channel. So I'm not going to go into that, but Samael Aun Weor really meant personal gnosis. And he also mentioned some more widely known terms of Gnosticism in there as well. So the other thing I want to mention here too is I regard Samael Aun Weor as a mystic just as much as a Gnostic. Mysticism and Gnosticism sometimes get confused, and there's also an overlap. I know in regard to my own practice, I was very much more leaning towards mysticism, but in more recent years I am more of a Gnostic practitioner now. So I just wanted to mention that as well. So I hope that gives people some idea of the background of Samael Aun Weor, and I will put some details below the video as well. Now this book, Tarot and Kabbalah, the subtitle is The Path of Initiation in the Sacred Arcana. So this is for people who want to find out about Tarot and Kabbalah as a path of initiation. I have always regarded Kabbalah in this way. And by the way, this book is really talking about, and when I say Kabbalah, this is Hermetic Kabbalah, that is usually spelt with a Q, the letter Q. I know there are authors and practitioners who still used the Jewish Kabbalah spelling with a K, but we're really talking about Hermetic Kabbalah here, which is also the Hermetic Kabbalah of the Golden Dawn. So for people who are familiar with the Golden Dawn Kabbalah, Hermetic Kabbalah teachings, this is a good book for that. You would need to be at least at the intermediate stage, because otherwise you will, if you look through this book, you are not going to be able to follow a lot of the approach and the ideas and concepts in here. It will seem very different, because the French esoteric and European esoteric Rosicrucian, so this is also Rosicrucian, it's very different to the system of the Golden Dawn. There's a lot of diagrams and pictures in here, so for people who like that, you will really like this book for that reason. There's lots and lots of black and white pictures and diagrams. That is really helpful. So the book's divided into different parts. The book is about 350 pages. This is the 7th edition. So the other thing about Samael Aun Weor is that he also referred to his teachings as the Doctrine of Synthesis. So this is very much about syncretism. So I only sort of like that idea to some extent. I am not a universalist. I'm not a fan of perennial philosophy. To me, all the different esoteric philosophies of the world are just too different to try to clump them all together, to try to find a common basis. That's my personal view on that. So this is all about Tarot and Kabbalah as a path of initiation in order to seek and find self-realization. And this is also meant to be an experiential path as well. I have used Kabbalah, Hermetic Kabbalah, as a more mystical, contemplative path, which you can. But now I am more interested in this personal gnosis of self-realization and following Hermetic Kabbalah as an experiential path. So in this book, part 1 is the study of esoteric tarot. This is particularly the 22 major arcana. And of course, this is according to the traditional Marseille tradition of justice being number 8. So I'm mentioning that as well. Anyone who's sort of thinking more about the Waite-Smith system, that is not what the French esoteric system or the European esoteric system is about. So that's the other thing that you need to keep in mind as well. The second part is initiation through the Arcana of the Tarot. This again is the 22 major arcana. So there's a big emphasis on the major arcana as a path of initiation. And the first part is about the esoteric study of the 22 major arcana. The second part is initiation through the arcana, 22 major arcana. The third part is the Kabbalah part. It starts off with concepts and ideas about the Ein Sof to start with, before you get into the 10 Sephirot, each of the different Sephirot, which are the spheres, 10 spheres. So there's a chapter on each of those, just as there is a chapter on each of the 22 major arcana. Then, what is really, really good in here as well is when you get to the end of each of the 10 Sephirot, you then get into the Qlipot, which is good to know too. It also includes a chapter on Diyat. And this is where he starts to include the white tantra, the white tantric ideas in connection with that. And then he has a chapter on the initiation of Teferet. Then in part 4, he talks about the significance of numbers, the esoteric numerology, for each of the numbers from 1 to 10. He even includes a chapter on the Apocalypse, or the Book of Revelation. Then you have part 5 is all to do with the major arcana in regard to prediction. And that is the 22 major arcana again. And what I should say here too is when he's talking about the major arcana and the minor arcana, he's talking about the Egyptian images for each of those. So this is all to do with the Egyptian system as well. The Egyptian tradition, which is what the French esoteric system was originally based on, all to do with the idea of the tarot originating in Egypt. And what is meant by that is not the cards themselves, it means the original esoteric philosophy that esoteric tarot is based on, coming out of Alexandria. So I wanted to mention that because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding there about that original historical statement. It's all about the esoteric philosophy that esoteric tarot is based on, coming out of Egypt, not the actual cards. So back to what I was saying about all of the Egyptian images. There's black and white pictures here of all the different Egyptian card images. He then continues in after part 5 there are appendices, and he continues what he calls the predictive tarot with the minors. He includes that as well. In the appendices there is also the Emerald Tablet of Hermes. There is a chart for Hebrew letters and numbers. There is a really good kind of a chart in here too on the Sephirotic Sephirotic symbols. So symbols for each of the Sephira, and in the form of sigils, a sigil for each one. I think that's really great. You don't see that very often. A sigil for each of the Sephira. And then you get into the glossary and index at the back. So there's a lot in this book. I find it a really good book. I don't agree with everything in the book. I don't agree with everything. I just wanted to say that. But because I like to study and research and follow some of the practices of the European esoteric system and the entwining of personal gnosis with that, this book is really good for that. So as I was saying, you really do need to be at least at the intermediate stage with the Golden Dawn teachings of Hermetic Kabbalah before you try to approach and read and understand this book. So that is what the recommendation from me is about today. This is for people who would like to compare and learn about the French esoteric system, which is also common to the whole general European esoteric system. I have got a playlist on my channel on the French esoteric system for people who are interested as well. If you'd like to learn a bit more about that system as well, looking at some of those videos, that also might be useful, because there's some other book recommendations on that playlist as well. But I particularly wanted to talk about this book today because it's not mentioned very often. I don't think it is all that well known with the Western esoteric system, with the discussions that I see about tarot and Kabbalah. So I wanted to talk about this book today for people who are interested. So thanks for watching, and I'll put some details below the video. Bye for now.